And we're live on the Entrepreneur's Handbook podcast. Today we have with us Tania Luna, who is an exited founder and the author of Lead Together, Stop Squirreling Away Power and Build a Better Team. She's also the founder of Scarlet Spark at the moment too. So she's got a lot of different feathers to her hat. So Tania's chosen today to talk about how sharing power can lead to you building better teams and greater success for your business. So, Tania, why did you pick this topic? Why is it something you're so passionate about?
So starting right off the bat with a good therapy question. For me, I think the moment where I really recognized just how important this topic is of sharing power came in 2020. I was leading another organization at the time called Life Labs Learning. And as you might remember, we experienced a global pandemic and our business, do you remember that? Tried to block it out, but our business was very heavily impacted. We went from this is amazing, we're growing so fast, we were doubling every year, to wow, our clients have no money and they also are not paying us on time. And so we had this incredible cash crunch. I mean, it was the worst I'd ever smelled in my entire life. I was just constantly so stressed. And really what got us through it and actually turned out to be the best year in our history versus our last year in history was that we very deliberately shared power with the team. And power is the capacity to get things done. So it's things like decision-making rights, but also knowledge, also, authority, context, things like that. And so we were just very deliberate about saying, we're not going to solve this by trying to control what happens. We're only going to solve this by really giving away as much power as possible. And that's what really allowed the power of the entire organization to grow. And so I wrote a book about it called Lead Together, Stop Squirreling Away Power and Build a Better Team. The book is grounded in psychology. It has all these practical tools from my own experience, but it's written as a story. It's actually the story of a squirrel named Sam Squirrel, who's the branch manager of his organization called Nuts for You. And just as I was facing a pandemic, he's facing a forest recession. And so he first tries to take control. It does not work very well, and he has to learn a different way to lead.
So obviously when you became a founder, right? So to become a founder, usually people are motivated by they don't like listening to other people or they want to do things their own way. So there's probably always some element of, whether people like to admit it or not, like a control freak in a founder, right? Because otherwise you just work for somebody else, right? You've got to have decided at the beginning, I want to do things my way. I want to step out and forge my own path. How were you at that stage? When you founded your first company, did you have that element to you at that point?
Yeah, I love that question. I think you're absolutely right. And it is really hard for me to work somewhere as an employee. I have started companies from a very young age. So this last company wasn't my first. So I had been on this kind of entrepreneurial path, and I really had to shift from being a control freak to what I like to think of as a context freak. So I'm still going to have control over something, but instead of trying to control outcomes or what people do, what I'm trying to do is to use that rebellious spirit and that part of me that doesn't like to be told what to do, to instead try to create the kind of environment where other rebellious people can thrive and where other people have the same context that I have the same information that I have, the same passion that I have. That means that, yes, I'm not controlling anyone else, but also no one is controlling me. So we have this kind of more entrepreneurial environment for everyone, including people who are employees.
Yeah, so you've got that nice equilibrium now, right, where you're doing what you like to do, but at the same time not trying to force anybody to do anything they don't want to do either, right?
Right. Because if you're a control freak, it means that you can really empathize with not wanting to be controlled. I do not want to be controlled. And therefore, I don't want anyone else to be made to feel that they're controlled. There's so much pressure these days on leaders and managers to find this impossible balance of, you shouldn't be a micromanager, but you have to make sure that people get the results that you are told or paid to get them to get, right? So you're like, how is that even possible? I'm supposed to control the outcomes, but I'm not supposed to control people. And a lot of the pain that managers and leaders are facing of burnout and overwhelm and overload has to do with the fact that they haven't figured out this balance of what is the power that I keep, what is the power that I share with my team.
And I can relate to that quite heavily myself at the moment. So as I've got different members of the team, then I think it's sometimes it's trying to work out, and being honest with yourself is a huge part of it, right? Where I can admit, like, at times I'm a control freak, right? But as long as I don't pretend I'm not, and I think it's also getting the right people on board, right? Because some people, they're okay with being managed in that way. They want to be told what to do. Whereas, like I said, many other people, they don't want to be told what to do. And if you hire somebody with the wrong where you've got a management style of whatever it is, and you hire somebody who you're expecting to work in the way that's against that nature, it's not going to work, right? And so what I was going to say there as well is, like, I can see, like, that it's something I know I'm working on myself, right? Like, how do I release that power? And I can see why it's going to be like a big problem, but why do you think it is so common that so many founders and leaders have these power imbalances, and what can be done about it?
Yeah. Yeah. I think in many ways it's common. Well, there's the individual reason it's common, which you pointed out, right? As a founder, you have a dream, you have a vision, you have a way that you want things done. And so it's natural to want to hold on to how things should be done. And then we have this big picture reason, which is that societally across so many cultures, you're sort of from a very early age taught that leadership means taking charge and taking control. It's this kind of power over model of leadership where I am strong because I'm telling people what to do. And so you have this internal drive and you have this large external drive combined with like pressure and stress and fear of not achieving what you need to achieve, which also makes us kind of tighten the reins of control as well. So I think the reason that we don't do it is internal fears and societal pressures. And most of us haven't seen the alternative. We've seen plenty of people tell us what to do. We've seen plenty of people take control. We haven't seen a lot of really good models of people not just giving up power, right? That's another really important piece. It's not about giving up control. If you tell me to give up control, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to, right? That feels very scary. It feels like losing something or dropping something. So I don't like to think about sharing power as giving anything up. I think about it as, instead of focusing on getting things done, I'm going to focus on the power, the capacity of each individual on my team. And I want to help each of them become more powerful. Why do I want them to become more powerful? Well, even if I'm a control freak, I want to see my vision come to life. And so I need all of these individuals that are part of my organization to have the skills and passion and capacity to be able to bring that vision to life. So I'm not giving anything up. I'm actually growing power all around me. And power is one of these kind of magical properties where the more you share, the more you have. It's not like if I give you decision-making rights, I have less ability to get things done. Now I have more time to do the things that I'm good at, or maybe even just go on holiday or take vacation, however you say it, so that I have more energy, so that I love my work instead of feeling resentful and burnt out because, I'm doing everyone else's job. So power grows when we share it thoughtfully.
I think what I find really interesting as well, and it happens to me a lot at the moment, is where you often get a lot of external praise when people are doing that kind of control freak aspect, or they're managing all parts of the business. And we all know it's unsustainable. We know that it leads to burnout. But at the same time, you have this conflicting, I guess, from society, right? Where I'm telling people I'm tired or I'm burnt out and I'm trying to delegate better and I'm trying to get more people involved in the team. And people are like, oh, but you're killing it, but you're doing so well. I was like, it's almost like a gaslighting aspect, right? Of like, I'm telling you that I'm working too hard, but you're being like, oh, but you're doing amazingly. Like, just keep it up. Like, don't give up. I'm like, but I'm trying to be healthier here. But I don't know if you've experienced that as well, of like that almost inverse.
Absolutely. I mean, we're all swimming in these waters, right? It's like, it's almost like, imagine that you're in this tank that has, a pollution in it. If you try to go to some little corner of the tank and swim away from everyone, the pollution is still in the water that you're ingesting. And so absolutely. And in many ways, I think the reason that at my last company, we were able to create this shared power way of working is we were able to create our own little culture. And we were able to constantly reinforce over and over and over, we are doing things differently. We are going to celebrate the moments when, instead of me being exhausted because I just did this project all on my own, we're going to celebrate the moments where I can't even remember whose idea that was. I can't even remember why this thing was successful. I just get to bask in the fact that we have succeeded. And you really do, when you're doing something that doesn't fit mainstream culture, you have to almost have like a mantra or a chant that you keep doing, either for yourself or within your team, to say we are doing things differently for a reason, and look at the benefits, look at the joy of not doing this terrible toxic thing that the rest of the world is doing to themselves.
So we know as a founder why it could be difficult to go down that path. But when you tried to implement this, did you ever get any pushback from the team? What were the challenges in the implementation side? How did you get everybody on board to believe in what you were trying to do?
Yes, that's, again, you're so insightful with the questions that you're bringing up, because most founders think, oh, I'm going to show up to work tomorrow, I'm going to tell everyone they have decision making authority, and people are going to love it. The reality is, no. With my last organization and with this one right now, Scarlet Spark, our nonprofit, there is tremendous support right from the beginning, because we're doing it right from the beginning, right? So to your point earlier, right, you can find the people with whom that resonates. Once you start growing larger and larger and larger, first of all, it's harder to find people who are naturally, as self-driven, as rebellious, and as willing to go against the cultural norms. And you need to find ways to make this model work for everyone, or for more and more people. The other thing that starts to happen is, the longer you wait to create this shared power culture, the harder it becomes. So, for example, we had a client not long ago who decided, we're going to create this environment that's self-governed, where people are their own manager, where people have a lot more decision-making authority. And, they announced it to the team, and everyone was like, no, I don't, this sounds like more work. This sounds really overwhelming. That sounds really scary. And when people resist it, it's for various reasons. It's not understanding what that looks like. Will I have to work even longer hours? Also not understanding, is it safe? Does this mean that if I make my own decisions, I'm more likely to get fired if I make a mistake? Things like that. And so what we always do when we work with organizations that are looking to share power is to help them come up with, what's a gradual process to get there? You don't want to just dunk people into the deep end of this. You want to start with, okay, well, let's start with, a survey, or let's start with just a conversation and go, where would you like to have more power? And let's define power. Power is the capacity to get things done. For some people, where they're really craving more power is, I don't want to have to check with 4 different people before making a decision. Can I have the decision-making authority to approve the work that I'm doing that I'm closest to? For other people, where they want more power is, they're going, I'm missing the skills I need to be able to really do a great job. Can you help me and coach me, or invest in some skill building so that I can take on more responsibility? So power means lots of different things, and you can really start small and gradual. And power doesn't have to mean a mandate. So, for example, one of the ways that we really help organizations share power more is just before they make large decisions, like, what should our strategy be? Or what should our objectives be for the year? Well, how about just getting input from others in the organization? Or maybe they're building some process, like, how are we going to do performance assessment? Let's get more people involved who are going to be the users of this process to give their input, or, to be part of the team that comes up with a solution. Just because you're inviting people doesn't mean that now it's their job to participate. But at least starting off with, I'd like to get your input if you're willing to share it, already gives people more voice and choice in how they participate in their organization.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. If you want to find some of the best lessons from season 1 of this podcast, then you can download our free ebook using the link in the show notes. You'll also get updates multiple times a week from our editors here at Entrepreneur's Handbook, all aimed at helping you become a better entrepreneur and helping you to grow and scale your business. Let's get back to the show. Because it's interesting what you said there as well, because I've seen people who is like, okay, you're in charge of this, like, you don't need to ask me any questions, I'm happy with whatever you do, I trust you. And what I've seen sometimes, they procrastinate because they don't want to make the decision for whatever reason. You say, like, oh, are they going to be happy with my decision? Am I going to get fired? Am I going to get in trouble if I do it wrong? And like you said, it's like, how do you make them feel comfortable, right? And like you said, it's gradually doing it. And has there been anything like where you've had that kind of scenario where somebody's just, it's taken them a bit of a long time to really gather that it's okay for them to make a decision. And if they get it wrong, they get it wrong and it's okay. And you can work together and it will carry on.
Well, I think there's 3 steps that need to happen to be able to like hand over this kind of power well. One is actually just clarity of expectations. So for many organizations, they don't actually take the time to say, and you are the decision maker on it, or the purpose of your role is to whatever it is, define and execute on this strategy. So oftentimes people are hesitant to use their power, not because they feel unsafe, but because they don't even recognize, oh, that's my job. I'm supposed to be doing that. The purpose of my role is to do this. So I think step one, if you're noticing that within your team, just check, like, are we aligned on what the expectations for the role are? Number two, to your point, is safety, right? If I think that, sure, I have the power to decide, but then I don't have any power over what happens to me if the decision goes poorly, then I think it could be really helpful to just work with people and go, okay, how can we make this safer to try? Safe to try could mean get feedback from 6 other people within or outside of the organization before you make the decision. Safe to try can also be, can you make this decision smaller? Can you pilot test it? Could you come up with a way to make a decision that could be unmade if it's going really poorly? Safe to try could also be, we're going to jot down here in this doc, you will not be fired if this goes poorly. Whatever it is that you have to do. Some of that, it's just the comfort happens and the trust happens over time. But that's about safety. And then the third piece is about capacity. Like, does the person have the skill or the will to actually make these decisions on their own? And there, some of that conversation can be about will, right? Do you want this? Do you want this decision-making authority? This role requires it, but that doesn't mean that, you just because the role requires it doesn't mean that that's what you want to do. Let's have an honest conversation about whether this role is the right fit. Right? Not everyone at all times wants to have decision-making authority. Maybe that's just not the right role for them. And then there's skill, right? Not just will, but skill. And there it might be, okay, so you don't know how to make the decision. Let's walk through this together. Let me give feedback. Let me provide some coaching. Let me give you context so that you become more and more skilled in making that decision. For a lot of leaders, when they notice that team members are procrastinating or scared or anxious, they're like, oh, I don't want you to suffer, so let me carry that weight for you. It's almost like if you're working with a personal trainer and I go, oh, this is heavy. And my personal trainer goes, oh, I'll do those bicep curls for you. Right? I'll do those deadlifts for you. That's not a great personal trainer because they're getting stronger and stronger. My muscles are not growing. So as a leader, if someone is really hesitating, it might also be an opportunity to go, how can I help your muscles get stronger? Not by taking away the responsibility, but by helping that responsibility grow lighter as a result of you growing stronger.
Yeah, I like that analogy that you had at the end there. And I see it as, now you've been able to like cultivate this kind of mentality and you've seen it in different teams. Like, what are some of the results you've seen from that? Like, have you seen, as you said, because you're now giving people more weight, right, within the team? What results have you seen where people have now grown because of that?
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, again, going back to my own organization, rewinding back to 2020, we, again, were flailing, running out of money. And so there were various things that happened across the organization fairly quickly. One was just we started giving so much more context. And so in the past, we always shared, here's our revenue. We also started sharing, here is how we're doing in terms of cash. So it would like literally go, here's what's in our bank account. We would show exactly what our expenses are. And so there we said, hey, here's what's going on. What are your recommendations, or what actions, do you personally want to take? So we didn't have to do any layoffs, for example, because people saw those budgets and they said, you know what, I'm going to cut back my hours, or I'm going to volunteer to take some time off unpaid for some period of time. So that was one of the things that happened, is that the weight of decision making became more shared and distributed. But also people started really stepping up and taking on new responsibilities. So they would go, I'm going to propose that we try out this new product. I'm going to, I don't have enough work right now because our clients aren't showing up. And so I'm going to volunteer and work on this team that's really overloaded right now. And so you just saw this kind of new ideas started emerging. People really started taking responsibility for seeing these new ideas all the way through to execution. It was just one of the most creative times. And also emotionally, our engagement score at the time was something like 90 something percent. By the time I left in 2021, we were at 96% engagement and we had 2% attrition. So at that year, 2020, 3 people left and then 2 of them actually came back. So it was also this incredible just engagement, commitment, excitement. There was fear and stress in the air, but also this sense that we were truly in it together. I always say that, like, when people notice that they're, that expression, it's lonely at the top, or if you're starting to feel like, there's no one I can turn to, or I'm so frustrated because I have to do this all on my own. When you have this really deliberate shared power organization, that loneliness is gone because you look around and there are people you can share information with. There are people that you can ask for support. There are people that you are teaching, but you're also learning from them. So as an organization, as I said, it ended up being our best year, both in terms of financially and in terms of profits. And we ended up having new product lines. We grew tremendously in terms of our customer base because all of these people across the organization were going out and giving out free resources to different organizations. And then, on a more day-to-day scale, when we work with organizations, helping them become more shared power, you notice that, for example, they start being able to do way more promotions internally versus having to hire from the outside. The diversity of the organization and all visible and invisible starts to grow because you're not just looking for people who already had the good fortune of having the skills that you need. You are building the skills and the confidence of a broader and broader pool of people. There's also more reliability. When we feel we own something, we're more likely to persevere and achieve our goals than if we feel that someone has just handed us that goal.
I think the point you made there as well about the empathy side of things, right? Because I think it's very common for people who are founders to have this gap between their employees or their team. And even people who are managers, maybe they're not the founders, but there's an us versus them mentality, or the founder's like, oh, my team is so lazy. And the team is like, oh, my boss is like this, right? And there's this, they don't communicate, so these problems come up, right? And I think a lot of part of that is often the founder's stress isn't, people don't know what's really going on because the founder is trying so hard to pretend they're strong all the time. And they're not showing like, oh, I'm really stressed out because I'm not sure if I can make payroll this month. And if I don't make payroll, then all of the people working here, they're not going to be able to meet whatever I need to have, right? But if you don't know that's why they're stressed out, then you just think they're just being like mean, right? You're like, why are they acting in this way? And like I said, by sharing that power and people understanding, oh, I'm making a bit more decisions than I was before, but I don't like envy that person at the top who's had to make all of these decisions all this time. And I guess it brings people closer together in that way as well, because you can understand actually they've been under a lot of stress, and it's the decision making element of it is I probably don't work as many hours as I used to when I had a job, but it's probably I'm probably way more tired and it takes a lot more out of me because all I'm doing is all the time is making decisions. And that's one of the things I'm working at the moment is like sharing that decision making out with the team and saying, look, I trust you. I've reviewed your work before. I can know what's going on. And we're getting towards the end now. And what I'd love for you to share is, I know you've got principles that you share about the power with weight, right? So what are those 4 principles? And like, can we hopefully get the audience who are listening now to take those away with them and apply them?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I'll try to summarize those quickly. And so just to explain again, power with versus power over. Power over, I'm using my power, my authority to essentially tell people what to do, to delegate work, to give orders. Power with is I'm using my power to build others' power, which then grows my power and our collective power overall. And so in the book, Lead Together, the 4 principles are sort of the key milestones on this journey that our hero goes through so that he could learn how can he create this shared power environment. So number 1 is follow a purpose, not a person. Follow a purpose, not a person. So to summarize that really briefly, the idea there is to be very clear on what is our shared purpose and how do we make sure that each person understands what is the what are the objectives, the strategy of the organization? What is the purpose of their own role? Kind of like what I was talking about earlier, right? Sometimes people are just not achieving the results you want because the purpose of why their role exists isn't clear to them. Does everyone within the organization understand what the high level purpose and even the individual purpose is? And once they do, that allows them to allow that purpose to be the leader versus trying to make decisions that just please someone who's in charge. That's one of the most toxic things that can happen for an organization. When I go, I just want to make my boss happy. The boss should be our shared purpose. And a purpose could be the big level emotional kind of inspiring thing, but also like, what's our strategy? What are our priorities? So follow a purpose, not a person. Number 2 is rely on context, not control. And that's kind of what we were talking about with going from being a control freak to context freak. So do people have the information that they need to be able to make really thoughtful decisions without you having to, be the decision maker constantly, and without you having to approve everyone's requests for things, to be that bottleneck of progress. So rely on context, not control. Number 3 is be a cultivator, not a collector. Be a cultivator, not a collector. What I mean there is, for many organizations, they think of the talent pool as this teeny tiny little finite, group of perfect A players that would be right for their organizations. And they're like, we just need to get those perfect people and then everything will be fine. But that's incredibly constricting. Right? Of course, you want people who are a good fit for your organization, but you want to be spending even more time cultivating this infinite field versus trying to recruit from this tiny crop. So that's constantly looking at, how do I build people's skills? How do I build people's knowledge? And then number 4 is build a community, not a crowd. Build a community, not a crowd. And that's all about, how do I look at my organization and go, how do I co-create this with others? How do I enroll people in everything from let's decide on strategy to let's create our processes and policies to let's be the face of the organization? The less we can focus on trying to get buy-in for our ideas, and the more we focus on getting build-in, let's build this thing together, the more people are committed, engaged, and the stronger that thing is that you were building.
I really love what you said about the context freak as well, because you mentioned it earlier. I think that's one of the big things I'm going to take away myself and I can see, because I know that it's causing problems at the moment. So I can see, okay, I really need to work on that. But I think the way you summarized it there is something I can keep in my head as whenever I'm giving instructions, whenever I'm passing out work or anything like that, making sure that the context is just really there. So it's been a pleasure to have you on today. And if people want to find out more about you, more about your book, where can they go to?
Yeah, so you can buy the book on Amazon, anywhere else that you get your books. It's called Lead Together, Stop Squirreling Away Power and Build a Better Team. You can also go to my website, tanialuna.com. That's TANIA, luna.com. And you'll see the link to the book as well as other free resources related to the book.
And if anybody listening right now could potentially help you, what's something that you're looking for help with?
Oh my goodness. Well, readers for the book. I'm really excited about it because it is coming out soon. So it would be wonderful for it to find its audience. If you have an event or a reading club or a group or something like that where you want people to get access to these ideas, please go ahead and get in touch. And also my nonprofit, Scarlet Spark, we do leadership development and organizational design for organizations that help animals. So if that's something that you care about, check out the nonprofit. We're always looking for partners, supporters, funders, and that's scarletspark.org.
Perfect. So thanks so much for coming on. Have you got any final words to the audience?
Just that this was a delight, and I really appreciate you, digging in and not just talking about this through the lens of the philosophical, but what your own experiences and challenges are. And I think if we're all as open as you were in today's conversation, we can find those little openings, those windows for just getting a little bit closer and closer and closer to this power with way of being.
Perfect. So I'm going to press end recording.